I never thought my life would turn into a courtroom drama. Not me. Daniel Harper, a simple, straight-talking man who worked 9 to 5, paid his taxes, and believed in love, loyalty, and the sanctity of marriage. For most of my adult life, I had the image of the American dream framed perfectly: a loving wife, a modest house in the suburbs, 2 kids, and a Labrador named Scout who never barked unless there was a squirrel in the yard. That was my world. Predictable. Peaceful. Or so I believed. I was a high school teacher, history, to be specific. The kind of teacher who had a drawer full of old test papers, coffee-stained essays, and broken red pens. I loved teaching. It wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. Every morning I'd wake up at 6 a.m., kiss my wife Sarah on the forehead, pour myself a cup of coffee, and quietly sneak out of the bedroom to avoid waking her. That was our routine. That was my life. It felt real. Sarah, my wife of 13 years, was a freelance graphic designer. She worked from home, often sitting in front of her MacBook in sweatpants, sketching logos and branding designs for small businesses. She was smart, charming, and she had this laugh, the kind that filled a room and made people turn their heads just to smile. We met in college. I fell for her in seconds. It took her a few weeks, but eventually she fell for me too. We weren't rich, but we were doing all right. The mortgage was manageable, the car was paid off, and we had enough in savings to take the kids, Ethan and Lily, on a vacation every summer. Our biggest problems used to be whether to order Thai or pizza for Friday nights. But looking back, I now realize I was too content, too trusting, too blind. Things started changing in small, almost imperceptible ways. At first, it was the late-night work calls Sarah took outside on the porch. Then the frequent gym sessions, which I naively celebrated as her taking care of herself. She started dressing nicer, putting on makeup even when she was just running errands. I chalked it up to confidence. Good for her, I used to think. But the distance grew. I could feel it even when we were sitting side by side on the couch. She stopped asking about my day. The warmth in her eyes when she looked at me, it wasn't there anymore. Still, I pushed the thoughts aside. We were just going through a phase. Every couple does, right? One night, I came home earlier than usual. A student had canceled tutoring last minute, and I decided to surprise Sarah with takeout from her favorite Mediterranean place. I walked in and heard her laughing. Not the casual laugh she gave clients. It was the deep, belly laugh she used to share with me. And she wasn't alone. She was on a video call. The man on the screen had slicked back hair, a tailored shirt, and a smile that made my stomach turn. When she saw me, her face dropped like a curtain. The screen went black in an instant. She stammered something about a networking call and claimed the man was a potential client. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. The food grew cold in my hands. That night, I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling, while she scrolled through her phone, completely unaware or uncaring that I was breaking apart inside. From that day on, the energy shifted. I started noticing more clues: receipts for expensive dinners, texts she quickly deleted, and calls she declined the second I walked into the room. But I still didn't confront her. Maybe I was afraid of what I'd hear. Maybe I hoped I was wrong. It was Ethan's 11th birthday when she finally told me. The candles had just been blown out, the kids were laughing in the living room, and she pulled me aside. Her eyes were cold, devoid of the woman I had once known. "I want a divorce, Daniel," she said, as casually as someone ordering coffee. I couldn't breathe. I stood there, staring at her, trying to make sense of what she'd just said. A divorce? After everything we've built? She looked down, not with guilt, but with annoyance, as though I was the one being difficult. I haven't been happy. For a long time. That was it. No explanation. No remorse. Just discontent wrapped in cruelty. What followed in the coming weeks was a blur of legal jargon, tense conversations, and emotional numbness. Sarah moved quickly, too quickly. She hired a high-powered attorney, froze our joint accounts, and filed for full custody of the kids. I was blindsided. This wasn't the woman I married. This was someone else entirely. Someone I didn't recognize. Her legal documents painted me as inattentive, emotionally neglectful, and even hinted at verbal instability.
Lies.
All of them. I had never raised my voice to her or the children. I was a man of patience, maybe too patient. But none of that mattered in the cold, unforgiving world of divorce court. My lawyer, Mark Benson, was a former litigator turned small-town attorney who had seen his share of messy divorces. He believed me, or at least he pretended to, and told me to stay calm, gather evidence, and let the truth work in our favor. But the truth was drowning under Sarah's carefully crafted narrative. The worst part? The kids. Ethan and Lily were caught in the middle of a storm they didn't ask for. Sarah started turning them against me, subtly at first. She'd cancel visits last minute, claim I wasn't reliable, and even told the school I had anger issues. I began to lose sleep, lose weight, and lose hope. But then, something happened. A small flicker in the shadows. Mark received an anonymous tip, an email with no sender name, just a message. Check her finances. She's hiding something. We didn't know who it came from or why, but it gave us a direction. A clue. A mystery in the middle of chaos. At the time, I had no idea just how far Sarah had gone, or what that tip would uncover. But it was the beginning of something bigger. The unraveling of a lie so deeply woven, it had nearly destroyed me. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day she said the word divorce. Hope. The days that followed that anonymous email were filled with tense meetings, paperwork, and a renewed sense of determination. My lawyer, Mark, had his assistant comb through every financial record, tax filing, and business receipt Sarah had submitted during the marriage, and especially in the weeks leading up to her divorce filing. The first red flag? Sarah's graphic design business had recently reported an unexpected loss, on paper at least. But that didn't make sense. She was working more than ever, constantly meeting clients, and had even bought herself a new designer handbag a month before telling me she wanted a divorce. Mark leaned forward in his chair one afternoon, tapping the stack of documents between us. She's hiding money, Daniel. I don't know where yet, but these numbers don't add up. I clenched my fists, not out of anger, but frustration. Can she really get away with this? She thinks she can, he said calmly. But we're not letting that happen. Meanwhile, Sarah was painting a picture of me in court that I couldn't recognize. She claimed I was emotionally abusive, that I had always put my job above the family, that I didn't support her career, and that the children were anxious around me. She even brought in a therapist, one she'd seen after filing, who testified that the kids appeared emotionally distressed when discussing their father. I wanted to scream. None of it was true. I had been a present father, helping with homework, coaching Ethan's Little League team, braiding Lily's hair before school. But somehow, she'd managed to twist everything, cherry-picking isolated incidents and reshaping them into a horror story. She was asking for everything. Full custody, spousal support, child support, and the house, my house, which I'd paid for before we even got married. She claimed she contributed emotionally and through unpaid labor, and therefore had a right to it. To the court, she appeared poised, well-spoken, and prepared. To me, she was a stranger in my wife's body. It was like watching someone wear a mask that I couldn't remove. Then came the most painful blow of all. It was the first custody hearing, and I had hoped, prayed, that at least joint custody would be on the table. But Sarah's attorney, a smug man named Kyle Whitman, stood up and presented photos. Images of me alone at home, beer bottles on the table, lights off, as if I was spiraling. They were taken from outside without my knowledge, followed by a screenshot of a tweet I made 3 years ago about being burnout from work. This is a man who is emotionally unstable and maybe struggling with alcohol, Kyle said dramatically. The judge raised his eyebrows. I was stunned. None of it was illegal. I had done nothing wrong. The beer was from a game night with a friend. That tweet?
Sarcastic.
But in court, the truth doesn't always matter. It's about the story you sell. Sarah sat in silence, eyes lowered, playing the role of the overwhelmed but courageous mother. I saw the judge nod slowly. My heart broke when I heard the decision. Temporary full custody to Sarah. Supervised visitation for me, pending a formal evaluation. I couldn't breathe. I walked out of that courtroom numb. My children, my entire world, had just been taken from me because of a narrative I couldn't fight without evidence. That night, I sat in my empty house, surrounded by silence and shadows. Scout, our dog, whimpered at the foot of the couch, confused by the absence of the kids. I looked around at the photos still on the walls, family vacations, birthday parties, smiling faces, and wonder how it had all gone so wrong. But Mark didn't give up. The finances, he kept repeating. That's where the truth is. Then one evening, a breakthrough. Mark's assistant traced an IP address linked to Sarah's freelance design accounts. Oddly enough, she'd been logging into two separate platforms, one under her legal name and one under a completely different alias, S. Reed. Payments were being made to both, but only one of them was reported in her tax returns. It hit me like a truck. She had created a second persona, a business under an alias, and was funneling money through it, claiming she made less than half of what she really did. She wasn't just lying to me. She was lying to the court. With this evidence in hand, Mark submitted a formal motion to reopen financial discovery. Sarah was furious. Her lawyer tried to block it, calling it a baseless invasion of privacy, but the judge approved the motion. When Sarah was subpoenaed for the financial records tied to S. Reed, the mask finally began to crack.
She panicked.
She claimed the account was a friend's and that she occasionally helped with branding. But the paper trail told a different story. Wire transfers, invoice emails, identical design files. It was all hers. The judge called a special hearing. And in that courtroom, for the first time, Sarah stuttered. I'll never forget the moment the judge leaned forward, peered over his glasses, and said, "Miss Harper, are you aware that hiding assets during a divorce proceeding is not only unethical but illegal?" The silence was deafening. Sarah's face turned pale. Her lawyer whispered something rapidly, but it was too late. The lie had been exposed. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, finally breathing, feeling the truth like sunlight on my skin after months of darkness. The tide had turned, and for the first time, justice was beginning to rise. The courtroom was different that morning. You could feel it, a kind of buzzing tension in the air, like something big was about to unfold. Sarah sat 2 rows ahead of me, her once flawless poise now visibly shaken. Her hair, usually styled to perfection, was pulled into a hasty bun. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, fingers anxiously twisting her wedding ring, which she still wore, oddly enough, perhaps as a final performance of the devoted wife. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew something had shifted. Mark had told me the night before, "Just be calm. What happens tomorrow will be a turning point." The judge entered, files in hand, glasses perched at the end of his nose. He looked over the courtroom, nodded slightly, and then said, "I've reviewed the financial evidence submitted over the last week. There are serious questions regarding the credibility of Ms. Harper's disclosures." Sarah's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, if I may." The judge raised his hand sharply, silencing him. "Not yet." Then he turned to Sarah directly. "Ms. Harper, do you recognize the name S. Reed?" She cleared her throat, voice shaking. It's an online persona. Just a username. A design handle." "Are you aware," the judge continued, "that over $180,000 in payments have been received under that alias in the past 2 years, none of which were disclosed in your financial affidavits?" Sarah's face flushed. She looked to her lawyer, then back to the judge. "I didn't think I had to report it," she said quietly. "It wasn't stable income." The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Even the bailiff looked surprised. The judge leaned back. "Let me be very clear. This court does not tolerate dishonesty, especially not when it involves misrepresentation of income, manipulation of custody hearings, and deception meant to sway financial settlements." I stared ahead, barely blinking. My heart pounded, not with anger, but with relief.
Mark stood up then.
"Your Honor, My client has suffered character defamation, false allegations, and loss of custodial time based on the assumption that he was the irresponsible, unstable parent. We now see that the party claiming to be the aggrieved victim was in fact manipulating the court process for financial and custodial advantage. Sarah's lawyer attempted a defense, talking about emotional stress, oversights, and confusion during the process, but it fell flat. The judge was done with games. "I will be ordering a full forensic audit of Ms. Harper's financials," he declared, voice sharp. "Until that is complete, this court will suspend her claim to spousal support and reevaluate the custody arrangement immediately." Then came the twist that changed everything. Mark handed the judge another document. "This," he said, "is a sworn statement from Ms. Harper's former business partner, a woman named Tara Mitchell, who confirms that Sarah began planning the divorce and the financial cover-up over a year ago, including instructions to backdate invoices and open secret accounts." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. I turned toward Sarah. Her face went ghost white. The judge read the statement silently for nearly a minute. Then he looked up. "Ms. Harper," he said sternly, "you are now under suspicion of premeditated financial fraud. If these accusations are verified, you could face not only penalties in this court but potential criminal charges."
She didn't speak.
Her eyes welled up, lips trembling. For the first time, she looked like someone who realized the show was over. The performance couldn't save her anymore. The judge adjourned for a short recess. Outside the courtroom, reporters had started to gather. Someone must have leaked the audit results because whispers of fraud, perjury, and custody reversal rippled through the hallway like wildfire. But I didn't care about any of that. I only cared about one thing: getting my children back. After the recess, the court reconvened. The judge took the bench with a composed but firm expression. He tapped his gavel once. "This court, having reviewed the preliminary evidence of financial misconduct, finds sufficient cause to reverse the temporary custody arrangement. Effective immediately, Mr. Daniel Harper shall be granted primary custody of Ethan and Lily Harper. Visitation for Ms. Sarah Harper will be supervised, pending the outcome of the ongoing investigation." The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Then, the gavel struck again. "Court is adjourned." I sat frozen for a moment. The words didn't quite register. Not until Mark turned to me with a rare smile and said, "You've got your kids back, Daniel." Tears filled my eyes. I didn't even try to hide them. Sarah was ushered out quickly by her attorney. She didn't look at me. Not once. Outside, I called my parents, then my kids. Ethan cried when I told him. Lily screamed with joy. They were coming home. Back at the house later that night, I stood in their empty bedrooms, still stunned. The beds were made, toys still in place, books waiting to be opened. It had all felt so far away, like something I'd never get back. But I did. Because I didn't give up. Because the truth had to come out. That moment in court, when the lies collapsed under the weight of evidence, it was more than a legal victory. It was the moment I reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my right to be a father. And even though the fight wasn't fully over, not yet, I knew, deep down, that the worst was behind me. And the best was still to come. The days following the courtroom decision felt like stepping out of a storm shelter into a brand new world. The clouds were still there, but the lightning had passed, and for the first time in years, I could see a path forward. Clearer, calmer, and entirely mine. But for Sarah, the storm had only just begun. News of her courtroom exposure spread quickly, faster than even I expected. Someone, maybe a clerk, maybe someone from her own legal team, had leaked the court documents to the press. Her once carefully curated image of a devoted mother and wronged wife shattered overnight. Local blogs that used to praise her as a creative businesswoman and community contributor suddenly changed their tone. Headlines like "Local designer accused of hiding six-figure income in divorce case" and "Mother under fire for lying in custody battle" dominated the feed. She tried to issue a statement through her attorney, a weak attempt to clarify things. She called it a misunderstanding, said her income was sporadic and unpredictable, and that she was under emotional duress, when she filed the original paperwork. But the public wasn't buying it. The story had gone too far. The receipts were too clear. Even her loyal online followers began to distance themselves. Her social media, once a showcase of styled photos, motivational captions, and curated mothering tips, turned into a battlefield. Comments flooded in. So, all this time, you were playing the victim while lying in court? You almost ruined a man's life. Shame on you. You can't preach empowerment while tearing your own family apart. She deleted her accounts by the end of the week. The backlash didn't stop at digital shame. Clients started pulling out of deals. One boutique she collaborated with released a statement severing ties in light of recent legal concerns and in support of transparency and integrity. And Tara Mitchell, her former business partner, the one who submitted the sworn statement, began telling her side of the story in interviews. She revealed how Sarah had slowly pushed her out of the business, demanded ownership over designs that weren't hers, and used their shared branding as a front to funnel private payments. It was ugly. It was raw. But above all, it was true. I didn't rejoice in her fall. I wasn't sitting at home laughing or popping champagne. In fact, it was strange to watch someone you once loved come undone in real time. There were moments I actually pitied her. But then I'd remember the way she weaponized the court system, how easily she tried to paint me as unfit, how she almost succeeded in erasing me from my children's lives. That pity quickly turned into distance. Meanwhile, my kids came back home. Those first few days were like a dream. They were shy at first, unsure, maybe even confused. But slowly, warmth returned. We baked cookies. We played board games. Ethan asked if I could help him build a model rocket. Lily wanted me to braid her hair. They were little things, but to me, they meant everything. One night, as I tucked Ethan in, he looked up and asked, "Daddy, are we staying forever now?" I smiled, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Yes, you're home now." But the peace wasn't without challenges. Sarah, facing mounting legal pressure, had to return to court for the forensic audit results. What the auditors found confirmed everything: offshore accounts, hidden PayPal transactions, and a fabricated invoice trail dating back nearly 3 years. The judge gave her two options: repay the misrepresented funds with penalties or face formal charges for fraud. She chose the former, but barely. Her assets were frozen. Her legal team dropped her. She had to sell her studio equipment and even listed her car online. The empire she built on appearances was crumbling brick by brick. She tried to contact me once. Sent a message through her mother. "I want to talk," the message read. "Just the two of us. Please." One last time. I didn't respond. What was there to say? That I forgave her? Maybe. But some forgiveness doesn't need a conversation. It just needs distance. That I still felt hurt? Maybe. But I was healing now, with my children, my home, my own soul. Weeks turned into months. I regained full custody officially. Sarah's visitation remained supervised, though she rarely showed up. It was as if, once the spotlight vanished, so did her interest. The kids asked about her sometimes. I never badmouthed her. I just said she was going through something and needed time. I didn't lie, but I didn't burden them either. They were free now, and so was I. One afternoon, Lily came home from school with a picture she drew, the three of us, holding hands under a bright yellow sun. "You forgot Mommy," Ethan said, pointing at the drawing. Lily paused and then said, "She's not in this one. This one's just our happy." I looked at the picture for a long time after they went to bed. Not out of judgment, but recognition. We had lived in a shadow for so long that we forgot what light looked like. But it had returned, quietly, without fireworks or grand gestures. Just warmth. Stability. Truth. And while Sarah's life unraveled, the consequences of her own choices, we were finally beginning to rebuild ours. Brick by honest brick. Redemption doesn't come all at once. It arrives in pieces, small, gentle, almost unnoticeable at first. Like morning light slipping through broken blinds, it starts by warming the places that were once cold. And that's exactly how my new beginning felt. I didn't wake up one morning with all the answers. I didn't suddenly feel like a perfect father or a healed man. But I did feel grounded, for the first time in years. The lies, the manipulation, the twisted half-truths Sarah wove around me, they no longer dictated my narrative. I was free. The first real change came when I reopened my consulting business. I'd put it on pause during the legal battle, but now that I had custody and my name was cleared, clients who had once disappeared quietly started coming back. Referrals trickled in. Then emails. Then contracts. It was slow, but steady. And steady was enough. I operated from my home office. The kids would do their homework on the floor beside me while I took Zoom calls. We created a rhythm, a life not driven by crisis, but by connection. One evening, while Lily was painting and Ethan was building his ever-evolving Lego tower, I stopped mid-email and just watched them. For a long time, their laughter filled the room. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just getting back to normal. I was building something better. I started therapy again, this time not out of desperation, but intention. I wanted to heal what I'd buried. The guilt, the betrayal, the part of me that once questioned if I was worthy of being a good parent after all Sarah had accused me of. My therapist said something that stuck with me. Redemption isn't about proving yourself to others. It's about reclaiming the truth of who you've always been. That sentence rewired something in me. So I leaned into it. I forgave myself, not because I had done wrong, but because I had believed for too long that I had. I forgave myself for staying silent when I should have spoken up, for tolerating chaos in the name of keeping the peace, for not seeing the signs early enough. And yes, eventually I even forgave Sarah. Not out of kindness, but because holding on to resentment was just another form of attachment. I didn't want to be tied to her anymore, not through love, not through hate, not through memory. I also began to share my story, anonymously at first, in support groups for fathers who had experienced manipulative custody battles. The response floored me. So many men had gone through the same, labeled, dismissed, erased simply because someone else was louder or more convincing. Many had lost everything: homes, children, reputations. My inbox flooded with messages. "Thank you for telling your story. I thought I was the only one. You gave me hope. I'm still fighting for custody, but now I believe it's possible." I realized something powerful. My pain had purpose. I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was helping others find the courage to rebuild theirs. A few months in, I was invited to speak at a local legal reform forum. They were discussing family court bias and asked if I'd share my experience as a father who had been wrongly accused. I stood before a room full of lawyers, activists, and parents, heart pounding, palms sweating, and I told the truth. Not just about Sarah, but about the system, the silence, the shame men feel when they're treated as afterthoughts in their own children's lives. I spoke not just for myself, but for every father who had been overlooked, dismissed, or destroyed. When I finished, the applause was quiet, but real. A woman approached me afterward, tears in her eyes. "My brother went through the same thing," she whispered. "He didn't survive it. Thank you for surviving." Those words haunted me for days. Not in a painful way, but in a sacred one. I realized how close I'd come to breaking too. But I didn't. I bent, yes. I cried. I screamed into pillows. I lost sleep and nearly lost myself. But I came back, stronger and more honest than ever. The kids began to thrive too. Ethan joined the science club and started building actual working prototypes with cardboard and LED lights. Lily picked up dance and asked me to sew sparkles onto her costume, badly but lovingly. I attended every recital, every school meeting, every bake sale, because now I was present, not distracted by legal documents, not drained by courtroom battles, not numbed by survival mode, but fully, unapologetically present. One night, months after the final court ruling, I found a drawing taped to my bedroom door, a simple crayon sketch. It showed 3 stick figures, me, Lily, and Ethan, with a big red heart above us. In the corner, written in Lily's handwriting, were the words, "Daddies are home." I stared at it for minutes, the edges of my vision blurring with tears. That was it. That was redemption. Not a court win. Not a paycheck. Not public vindication. But this, knowing that in spite of everything, my kids still saw me as their safe place. I took a picture of the drawing and kept the original in my wallet. I carry it with me to this day, because it reminds me that even when everything falls apart, the truth always finds a way to shine through. My story isn't just about revenge. It's about restoration. And if I can rise from the ashes, so can anyone. In the quiet that followed the chaos, I learned something sacred, something few people ever truly understand until life breaks them and builds them back again. Karma doesn't always come swiftly. It doesn't always shout or explode. Sometimes, karma whispers. Sometimes, it arrives wearing silence like armor. But it always comes. And when it does, you don't need to lift a finger. That's exactly how it unfolded for Sarah. After losing custody and being exposed for her lies, she spiraled, not in a dramatic, public way, but in the way that people do when the mirror finally turns toward them. She tried to hold on to her job, but the truth eventually leaked out. Whispers in the break room. Emails not returned. Her supervisor quietly reassigned her before she eventually resigned under pressure. The social circles she once thrived in, the ones she used to parade our children through for admiration and validation, began to distance themselves. Friends stopped calling. Her curated image cracked. The facade collapsed. One afternoon, months after the final court ruling, she showed up at my door. I didn't even recognize her at first. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes hollow, her confidence gone. She stood there, holding a small bag of toys. "For the kids," she said quietly, not making eye contact. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't spit fire back at her for the years she stole from me. I simply stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and spoke calmly. "They're safe. They're happy. And that's all that matters now." She nodded slowly, her eyes welling up. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she whispered. "But that was the thing about lies. They have momentum. They don't stop once you start them. They multiply. And eventually, they turn on their creator." She turned and walked away, her shoulders heavy with regret. And I stood there, breathing in the stillness. That was karma. Not revenge. Not retaliation. Just truth coming home. And for me, that was enough. I didn't need her to suffer. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need some grand gesture of remorse. Because I had already won. Not in the courtroom, but in life. I had my children. I had my peace. I had my integrity intact. And more importantly, I had transformed. See, life will hand you storms. Some of them will be caused by others. Some will be caused by your own blind spots. And sometimes, those storms will feel unfair, unrelenting, unforgivable. But here's what I now know. You don't have to fight to be seen. You just have to keep living in truth. Because the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried, always finds its way back to the surface. Let the liars talk. Let the manipulators play their games. Let the people who don't know your heart judge you based on gossip. None of that defines you. Your actions do. Your consistency does. The way you love your children, even when no one is watching, that defines you. The way you show up when it's hard, that defines you. And eventually, even the people who doubted you will see what was always there. Let karma do the talking. Because karma is patient. Karma waits in the shadows, silent and sure, letting everyone believe they got away with it, until suddenly they don't. I didn't plan my redemption. I didn't script Sarah's downfall. I simply stayed standing when the world tried to knock me over. I kept showing up. For my kids. For myself. And in doing so, I became the kind of man no one could ever erase again. To the fathers reading this, or the mothers, or the sons, or the daughters, whoever you are, if someone tried to take your truth away from you, if someone painted you as the villain in their twisted masterpiece of lies, if you've been silenced, shut down, pushed out, or made to believe you weren't worthy, I'm here to remind you, you're not broken. You're not defeated. You're not defined by what they said or did. You're defined by how you rise. And rise you will. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, because the truth always wins. Even if it takes time. Even if it takes tears. Even if it takes losing everything first. Let them laugh now. Let them point fingers. Let them tell everyone their story. Because one day, sooner than they expect, karma will sit them down and show them yours. And they won't laugh then. They won't smile. They'll remember every warning they ignored. Every act of cruelty they brushed off. Every manipulation they thought they got away with. And when that day comes, you won't need revenge. You'll be too busy living your best life, surrounded by love, peace, and purpose. Just like I am now. Because in the end, the sweetest revenge isn't destruction. It's reconstruction. It's becoming whole again. It's walking into your future without carrying the weight of their lies. And when you finally get there, when you wake up and realize you're not just surviving, but thriving, remember to breathe it in. Remember the road it took to get here. And never, ever let anyone dim your light again. You earned this. You deserve this. Let karma handle the rest.